Dear friends, so it's great that we are doing the record so that we would be able to revise this session in the future. Well, our topic is quite simple to understand, so we should understand that we are in a very precise location. It's not just an abstract city. And to understand and to be cognizant of that, that's not an easy task. Therefore, some architects decided to formulate their own identity, and this is what we are going to deal with. Colleagues, who is the first to speak? Let's have presentation 1. Bingo Megabutka. Anton, the floor is yours, so let's get to that. Alexei, the pointer is with you, right? Could you please give it to Anton? Right, good. 1, 2, 3. Hello to everyone. My name is Anton. I represent Megabutka Design Company. I'm architect. Oh, it's a great view here. Lovely. Well, what are we going to discuss today? It's identity, national architecture. This is a long dragging topic, and we are actually bored about that. So we are into that for over 10 years. And this issue is very well known to the market. It's kind of mature. So there is nothing to shy off. Yeah, but apart from a project, you need to know how to implement that. Yeah, that's a very drag indeed, because once you have designed that, it's already outdated. So we started our pathway with the Russian style project. It was a project regarding a new Russian city. We tried first to make it into a fairy tale, but then we just developed a more serious understanding and decided to think, how can we produce identity? So now we have identity everywhere. And this identity is very versatile. Here you can see a few of our projects. We have the Russian style on a global scale. This is the hotel on the Kudykina mountain. We have the Chuvash identity, the Moscow identity, the mansion real estate identity, and Uzbekistani identity, a resort spa identity, a lead improvement in Ulyanovsk, also very identical. Yakutia, that's a residential building. Nizhny Novgorod identity for a fairy tale, for a fairy square. So as for Kazan, we developed and participated in the tender for the theater building. And this is what our Kazan identity looks like. You can see what the building is like. This is the Tatar identity. I believe that this building will come true. That's land improvement. So it's a direct reference to the famous Tatar suites. We also did a little bit of design, and the Soviet identity and the Arctic identity as well. So I would like to start with our most famous project, which is the Kudykin high-rise, Highland.
Нет, нормально все? Если что, да, меня.
Скажу время.
Вот. Значит, Кудыкина гора. Мы этим проектом занимаем
the Kudykin Highland is a territory in the Lipetsk region. We've been into that for 7 years. Yes, some 7 years. And the client asked us to make some land improvement to the land that our client inherited. I had no understanding what to do with that. There were lots of unclear details that we had to adjust somehow. So we decided to implement. So we decided to make it into a municipal park in line with the client's idea. First and foremost, we have built a highway so that to bring together different areas of the park and residential areas. And we also had to manage the circulation in this area. Then we started to do the hospitality industry there. We also had some architecture, some buildings on this territory initially, so we decided to adjust them for the hospitality industry. We decided to implement some culture codes, some historical references. And initially, the client asked us to make it integral, into one integral style. The initial version caused lots of questions with the client. So we were trying to find the way that the client would like. But we understood that Russian architecture has always been under development. It has absorbed lots of traditions and characteristics. So we decided to make it into some kind of development, a street as a space, and houses along the street to complement on that space so that every particular building bears its own function. First there is a shop, then there is a canteen, then a restaurant, then the resort area. And so we decided to make it into a hospitality center. Recently, we have been awarded a prize for this project in the US. So we like this project very much. Here you can see some views. We dealt a lot with architecture and eco-friendliness so that to bring together nature, architecture, and the interior. The raw materials are all eco-friendly, and the fragmentation of the space is indeed unique. So this looks very fragmentary. It's all kind of scattered and different, like nature is. So there are specific references. So navigation within this space is managed by specific labels or tables, indications, and symbols. However, we also wanted it to be fresh and smart. So you can see this carriage here over there for a shop that indeed works great because it reminds of some crafts and exclusive products. And instead of the plates, we used ceramics and the mosaic strategy. So the first building was in black. So why do we mean Russian identity by that? We were actually criticized for a lot for choosing the black color, but black looks great because Russian architecture, wooden buildings look black. It is dark wood. Any fresh wood or timber would lose the effect of novelty. It would go old-fashioned very quickly, whereas black color stays for long. And this is another building. This is the hotel. Our prototype were Russian stoves. The idea was that you go out of the room and immediately you find yourself amid nature, amid a natural landscape. And that's great. You just leave the room and off you go, you're amid nature. So that between nature and the place where you live, there are just a few steps apart. And everyone has their own, every room has its own balcony, its private balcony, so there is some privacy and integrity altogether. So we also did a lot of work about the landscape. And you can see the interior. And to wrap up, you can see that by 2021, this project started to generate revenue, and it was included into the best 15 sites of Russia according to Yandex ranking, and then it has grown in terms of its return on revenue by 70%, and now this project is gaining profit. Our next project belongs to Dagestan. I've got a colleague from Dagestan, and I feel a little bit ashamed with my colleague because I'm going to talk about the identity of Dagestan, and I feel very much humble, I should say. This is a residential building in the Kaspiysk city, line 2, so it's a little bit far from the beach. So this project was very specific in terms of its function, and the investor has lots of problems. The landowner had lots of problems with that land. So first of all, we decided to make a survey. This survey was regarding the potential function of the project. It includes lots of pieces of information regarding functionality, the location, the global view of the project, and the specific parameters of the land. So this is how we made some conclusions so as to find the target audience for this project. And then we come up with some kind of hypothesis. What is the unique aspects that we can offer? And when you suggest a top value to your client, a top value that is based on some benefits in sales, or the attractiveness, so as to bring together the audience that the client is not yet considering. So if you add some kind of an extra function to your item, to the real estate, and you can promote it very fastly. And this helps both the developer to think about something together with the architect, and on the other hand, it is an opportunity for us to learn more about the context of that region. So you cannot express identity if you do not feel the culture of the region. So this allows you to build some vision through that meaning, a meaningful vision, I mean. So the location is indeed great. There is the sea, there are lots of sites nearby. So we were trying to understand what culture and what kind of architecture there used to be in Dagestan. So you can see that the buildings looked quite simple. I mean, the buildings in mountains, the residential houses in mountains, they were very simple, but with some key architectural elements. So when you start searching for the identity, you analyze all these aspects and you focus on some specific details so as to explain to the client how that works, so that the client could also feel the atmosphere, feel the environment. So that's multicultural concept, and it works indeed great. So we cannot cover just only one region. So our client, for example, was from the Urundul clan, and we studied some elements of the Urundul indigenous architecture. And we agreed with the client on the ornaments, on the raw materials for construction. So the key idea was to develop in the client some kind of attachment, a sentiment of attachment to that project. So we looked at the land, we looked at the structure of the land and the land plot, and how can we locate the construction machines there. And then we went to the design stage. So today I'm talking about how extensive the work done is. And we don't like actually the approach when the client says, well, could you please also add this and that? I've never thought about it, but why not add it? But you know, to implement a project, the architect should make the project scalable, and the architect should understand spaces of different scale, from the very particular location in the city, a district, a neighborhood, a community, all the way to the entire downtown with its suburbs. So these scales are always different. And all these scales taken together define the general image of the location to be. Number one is not our land. It does not belong to our client. But we suggested to somehow harmonize the adjacent land and buildings to the concept of our project. So on the one hand, all these shapes and buildings are absolutely functional. All of them, they kind of shoot with an overview onto the sea. And meanwhile, the buildings, every building, in a bird-eye view, looks like a stone flushed by the sea. So there is another aspect of eco-friendliness in that. So the way we structured the volume of that space reminded us of nature. Because when you are amid a very busy city, you want to be closer to nature, and you want to feel yourself as though in the mountains. And definitely the architecture of mountain villages in that region had a lot of impact on our project. And we decided to incorporate this noise of the sea and the noise of the mountains and the echoes throughout mountain spaces into our project and in the shapes of the building. This is what the residential buildings look like. So you can see that to the left there are buildings in a traditional shape, and on the other hand, to the right, you can see that we implemented a very tricky but simple principle. We did the windows of different spaces, different shapes. And you can see this gives a very specific touch to every building. Here, you can see this desire to step out, to be different. And I believe that that's a very great pursuit. If you want to be different from others, you want to be different from the background. And the ornament, that's the first thing that comes to one's mind. We realized that well, from the outside, the architecture may seem quite simple, but in the inside, the interior was very sophisticated. We decided to make it both aesthetic and sophisticated. We did also the zone distribution, the function distribution, so as to maximize the functionality of that space. So you can see that, well, this is what it looks like.
So this is it. And that is the view. That's it for my presentation. Is it okay with the time limit? So you can subscribe to our Telegram channel, Megabudka. We write good texts. Just a short, brief question. The first line, have you adapted, have you adjusted another project? Well, it's a complicated story in Dagestan with owning a land, because legally speaking, everybody knows who is the owner of the land, but there are no legal documents proving that. So there is a person who has his land plot and he doesn't do anything with it. And developers are interested in having a kind of synergy and building something there. So we put forward a kind of proposal that could be interesting for those people, so that there is an idea in their minds that that is what lies in the future of this land. The second presentation, and we pass the floor. Thank you. To Prospect Bureau, Ms. Julia Musina and Mr. Alexander Safarov will be talking about identity as an example of Ufa city. Good afternoon. My name is Sasha and this is Julia. We are representing Prospect Architectural Bureau from Ufa city. We are not designing in such a widespread range, only in Ufa city. Let's make it a little bit louder. And we are not actually about identity, as our colleagues mentioned before. It was accidental. We are like this bird that likes something bright and takes that into its house. We came to the identity without fully understanding it. We were doing a lot for Ufa, and then we became Bashkir architects, but that happened after a long period of time, after we implemented our projects. We do not have a lot of projects. I think we will tell you about 4 projects. Aristocrat complex in the central part of the city, next to Yakutsova Park. The central park of the city that is loved by the residents, and central streets of the city surround it. And initially there were other projects proposed for that housing of 25-story buildings, and it was a pity if this happens to the city center. And we convinced the customer, and he believed in our ideas, and it was quite successful as a result. One of the key ideas, between the lake and the central street there was a private sector, and there was no connectivity back then, and we wanted our site to be aligned with everything that surrounds it, so that we have more permeability and more connectivity in this city, and so that they do not wish that the housing was built there instead. So we got back to the historical planning. We shaped 2 parts of the space, and we build a kind of environment for the residents, and the residents, they live there together, but they do not intersect with each other. Yes, we made these 2 streets longer, and it gave an opportunity to the residents to get easy access to the park, and that was in the interest of the residents. And this is their area that is very loved by the residents and the Stilabite, and it was a novelty back then, and we presented it as our original idea. This is already built infrastructure. The facades in those buildings, they look into the street, and we see the so-called mirror effect, the context effect. And it is more minimalistic in terms of the finishing and furnishing and details, and those windows that look into the park. It has very interesting balconies, and it has more romantic style. And there is a fashion to substitute old trees by the new ones, but we still preserved the old ones here. Here you can see the examples of those interesting balconies. On this territory, there were some historic sites belonging to cultural heritage that were there in the park. And the environment itself was quite interesting, but as a tribute to this place, we preserved some details from those parts and included that in our design of the new buildings. But the heritage is still there, of course. Yes, I missed one of the slides. So here, the Samodelkin house, it has been restored, reconstructed, and a specialized organization was in charge of it. It's completely wooden, but the interior was our work, and Julia will be talking more about it. So historic color is light beige, and we were happy to have this customer that dressed us, and me personally, we designed interior. And it was so beautiful, so artistic that we even didn't want to change it. And there is a trend that now they remove a lot from the historic part of it. But we removed a lot of wallpaper, various layers, and in our case, we cleaned it quite carefully, and this historic layer, it looked like a light beige color, and we thought that it was excellent, and we included that into our interior design. And it used to be a merchant house before, and then 100 years after the Soviet period, it belonged to other organizations, and now there are offices that are located there, and we tried to make it aligned with the functionality, but we preserved the planning, all the molding, we restored the flooring because it was in a very bad state, but it was a very circumspect attitude towards the historic building for the future office center. The second, and Knyazev house was the second site. It was in a very bad state. There were only 2 walls remaining, and we tried, we did everything we could to preserve it, and almost all the interior part ours, and I was fortunate, our organization, let's say, was fortunate to get this project, because the owner of this building who bought it, he came to us for the interior design, and we preserved those trees at the time of the construction, because when the project was launched, everything was already ready, but old trees remained there, and it improved the state of the environment. And 2 historic monuments, they also served as a very important element. I would like to ask you a question straight away. On the left, from the red line, there is an interval from the red line, or there were no requirements there, or you had freedom there. How did you convince the developer to build it in accordance with the red line? Alexander can comment on that, because it's an interesting story. Because actually, initially, there shouldn't have been a house there. But thanks to the preservation of the monument, this organization, they protected it. No, but I meant the main building, because any developer would say that you should build that in accordance with the red line. But the streets used to be narrower. And the red line, it was a longer line than before. So we chose this way to do that, and the restoration specialist who worked with the project, he came to me, and magnificent architecture of historic buildings, high ceilings. I didn't do much. We put some paintings on the wallpaper, some decor elements, and then we were told that the interior of these buildings is in line with what surrounds that. And I think it was actually, we were lucky to have it like this. And now a lot of people take their pictures during their wedding days. Almost in the center of the city we have another site. Visually it's not the center of the city. On the left, the Yefim Kremlin used to be there, and we have a triangle section, so the monument of friendship, exactly on the place where there was the old Kremlin. It remained there. And also the church, the cathedral of Sergei is there. And the task was to preserve the church. And it was very difficult for the developer to buy this land plot. So he had to justify it. And we wanted to show that it is still a center. And how did we achieve that? We added small scale architecture, a little bit chaotic architecture. These are the drawings that we used, the sketches. This is how we executed it. In the center we have the church, then we have an amphitheater around it, and the silhouette architecture that works well with small-scale architecture, all the details, the density of the construction that is quite characteristic of historic architecture. And we used these silhouette components, and they helped us to make an image of the city more complete. And we see here a nice horizontal line that divides light from dark and symbolizes the historic image of the city. Also the detailed bricks, you can see the lines surrounding it, and the diversity in terms of the number of the stories, and a lot of beautiful views were the results of that project. We did not expect that, and the developer was arguing with us, but then it turned out to be quite cozy and nice. This is the second part, the second place where wedding pictures are taken quite often. And here we show you this small-scale architecture with the connectivity to the private story. And here is the entrance. This is the view from the bridge on the entrance to the city from far away. The next site. These two projects have been successfully executed, and the developer is very much satisfied, and we were also happy with the results. And the next sites are the projects. We have the conclusions of the expertise, but it has not been implemented yet. So these are the museum, the paleontology and the history of the Earth. Gandapao Park, this is the territory of the Salavatsk Mechetleno village. And there we have the unique geological section with where there were some paleontological findings, and based on that we had the elaboration of the project of the park. It's about the history and many other things, and we designed museum. It has 3 parts: the landscape park, and also the geological section with the terraces, also strengthening of it so that we can organize tours there, and the museum itself. This is the 3rd component. This is how it looks like from the outside. On the left picture is the village itself. It preserved its original state. It's a very modest village, and the residents of the village, they love their village passionately. They have a mosque with all their traditional carpets, and there is a river there, and during some inundations they find some horns of rhinoceros, and they organize this museum of historical findings. Everybody is proud of this place, and when you come to this village, any boy can tell you about what they have there, all the findings, and the customer expressed their wish to organize special classes, special facilities for the children, to give classes so that they can work with microscopes. But is it a private initiative? Well, semi-private, I should say. The geological park that is implemented not from the top but from the bottom. There are experts, museum workers. They are fans of everything they do. It was very interesting for us to work jointly on this project. And when we were selecting the site for the museum, there were different shapes that were offered to us. There were different proposals, and that was their storage facility for the grain. It used to be like this, and we decided to preserve it. We preserved the walls because they looked quite cool. It was designed 70 years ago, and we put the glass parts inside. So now we have a kind of a static architecture, and it is not something gloomy. It is organically aligned with the surrounding environment, and it doesn't look like a castle. So we tried to move away from a kind of a rich buildings amongst a poor village. When we saw this building of the grain storage facility, it has 50 years of history, but from the point of view of the colors, it is perfectly aligned with everything that surrounds it. And it so happened that there's some old ladies, they were making the carpets, and we included those elements, the lighting elements as well. And this is an example of the crafts that was included into this stylistics of the place. Some wooden elements like this heart on the village toilet, some ceramics elements, so a lot of details that show that it is not an urban museum, it is a museum of the village. It has its own national historical values, and that is what we tried to show in the interior of the museum. So what happened there when the residents entered enter the building and they feel quite comfortable inside. And when people come from other regions, they can see this authenticity of the building. They come there not to see a white, perfect building.
I just wanted to point out this open swimming pool without a roof, not far from the resort in Bashkiria. Well, you know, in that region, there are lots of buildings that date back to the Soviet times. So it's kind of a mixture of styles. So we had to consider how to merge with that haphazard environment. The square of the swimming pool is 30 by 30 square meters, so it's quite large. What's important is absence of wind. So the location was absolutely deprived of wind because it was sheltered. It was located in kind of a valley. So we were able to implement our artistic approach. And these arches that are indeed functional because they separate the open part of the swimming pool from the indoor part. You can see the view from the outside. This is what this swimming pool looks like. It's kind of static. But inside, we decided to inflict some local identity. Well, this location and its geography, and this is specific. And you can see that Bashkiria is very much popular with its black and colorful embroidery. There's a colorful threads against the black background. So we decided to merge with that and implement this identity, this concept of the Bashkir embroidery into our location. So people who come to Russia, they want to see the local culture and the local identity. They're not looking for some super luxury comfort. Therefore, we did lots of carvings and lots of crafts in the interior, as you can see. So something which is very much specific for this particular region. While working on this project, we understood that we love this harmony between the outdoors and the indoors architecture. We very much fancy these bright contrasts. So, with all that in mind, the buildings looks very much modern. It is in conformity with all of the contemporary standards. Well, if you have a look at any old-fashioned residential building, you can see that most of such buildings built in Soviet times look identical. But although those are identical from the outside, those are very much different from the inside. And this is in the inside that the identity can demonstrate itself. We were also responsible for some indoor interiors. And we were told that, yes, you managed to capture the Bashkir design, the identity of the Bashkir region. So, and today this design is perceived as the Bashkir design. But in fact, actually, it is our own invention based on the Bashkir design. It is the way we adopted the Bashkir design, but we never get offended. We're happy that we are completely associated with the Bashkir design. That's great indeed. So this phenomena was an accident. It happened accidentally and occasionally. But the ultimate outcome is that once you dive into all these details emotionally, you understand how time-consuming this work is. Because on top of that, it's quite difficult to find the raw material for our interiors. Well, this is it. This is our workshop. And this is our Telegram and website. So please do get subscribed if you are interested. Okay. To wrap up, I would like to give the floor to Shamil. He's going to talk about the general experience of looking for identity. And his perspective is going to be that of architecture. Although the identity of Dagestan is very bright, but Makhachkala is kind of a melting pot. So we need to keep up relations with Jamil. Dear friends, hello to everyone. Well, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk about Dagestan. That's greatest pleasure for me. And I have the following question. Are there anyone who has been to Dagestan at least once in life? Well, we have quite a few people. That's good. Then I would like to say a few words about that. I just also wanted to add that 7 years ago, I don't remember what currency they're using now. Probably something has changed from when I was there 7 years ago. Well, it is said that it demonstrates that you must value the place where you are born. When you perceive your place of birth from afar, you kind of reinvent it. I understood the peculiarities and the attractions of Dagestan only once I moved out of it. These buildings are the labor and the craftsmanship of people who were engaged, of the people who have been living there for thousands of ages and who produce specific results. In Dagestan, there are over 30 nationalities, and every nationality has their own language. So this fuels enormous competition between nationalities. And everyone is trying to stick out. If we look at statistics, so imagine Dagestan has got 30 nationalities, each of them representing over 1,000, over dozens of thousands. Therefore, these people are indeed unique. And actually, you can see that this is like a kilt made out of smaller pieces of wool. It's so colorful, so haphazard. When you study every people has their own language, their own architecture, their own style, and their own crafts. There are craftsmen who do only carpets, those who do only metal processing, those who do only who knows what, tableware, for example. So you should be focused. But at the same time, you should compensate on absence of the rest by building good traditions. So, and every particular village would be focused on a particular day denoted to reward their job, and on that particular day, the representatives of these people should vote, should exchange their products. For example, there is a Tabasarani ethnicity. They exchange their product every Wednesday. So Dagestani languages are very complicated. They've got 48 cases. And the same, likewise, the carpets also include lots of nodules. So this is the place where I was born. The place is called Novaya Shkola. This location unites several entities. There is such a union called Novaya Shkola because we brought together the older traditions and those that are pivotal for Afghanistan now. So we decided to do it as a new school. And the Makhachkala governor started talking about the new school, and he was asked accidentally, where is the new school built? And he said, no, it's the name of the project. It's not a location. So the tasks are quite challenging, but we are able to step up to those and deliver on them. The first project that we were lucky to implement is a pre-revolution building, which was built at the very beginning of the 20th century. This building possessed several receptions, and after October Revolution, this building was appropriated by the government, and the building was renamed so as to house the Druzhba, or Friendship, cinema house. Unless a fire took place, after the fire, the building was conserved and it stayed. But then later, local businessmen who were not ignorant decided to take things in their own hands and to make this location a most attractive location in Makhachkala in Dagestan. So they decided to add more culture. And then the concept emerged so as to represent only local brands and only local manufacturers who manufacture crafts. So this is what the building looked like when we were invited. You can see some burnt fragments. So when we saw this building, we were absolutely stunned. We had two ways to follow. Way one was to do design, and that's it. And the other way was just to say openly and frankly that we have never been confronted with anything of the kind, and that this project would need lots of creativity. And when you are about to say that you are lacking competences, all of a sudden you feel invigorated. And we decided to do the design. We did a survey within the first month. We covered We made a list of locations that echoed the experience and the expertise that we were already having. And we decided to look at how can we deliver on that project. And then exactly we understood that there are lots of fantastic solutions, but we won't be able to implement those in that building. So we decided to think, what can we do out of that? So there are people behind every item of craft, behind every carpet. So we decided to understand that we need to develop a specific approach. We need to rely on specific people in implementing these particular characteristics. Therefore, we need to follow some innovative principles. Principle 1 was approach is key, not the solution. Then we looked at the Venice Charter. After the Second World War, when all buildings were dilapidated and destroyed, the Europeans were unable to agree on how to restore the buildings. And the cause of that was that we are not quite transparent with people. Therefore, we decided to say that if we ruin the older building, the new one that we build should look like the older one. So our building was after fire. And we decided to demonstrate everything that we included into this building as our own new know-how. Here you can see this building after the renovation, after the implementation of the design. You can see the main hall. There used to be receptions of high-ranking guests. And you can see that this is a specific space that can get transformed depending on the purpose. We also unveiled that apart from quite tangible materials, there's also light. Light helps you deliver and communicate mood. You can focus one's attention on what you want. So we decided to tell the owners that in our mind there are some 20 scenarios. So we decided to play with light to communicate the atmosphere. And you can also see how the spaces look like, because everything that remained was demonstrated anew. We traced the commentaries. And there were lots of questions regarding when are you going to finish the renovation? Why is it such a drag? Why is it still on? But we calmed the audience down, telling that we started doing the wedding photo series. So we believe that if you choose this as a location for wedding photo sessions, this location has a specific trust on behalf of the people. Well, next, underway so far, we have different projects. All our projects are split between two parts: projects in the mountainous areas and projects in highland areas or in valleys. We have another project. This is land improvement of the Atlas territory, 40 hectares, 1,800 meters above the sea level.
So we spent a week when we started working on the design, and all these 40 hectares we walked along all the territory, and in the course of these events I showed it later. The presentation and the drone helped us to make some shooting and recording of the territory, and we worked with information model. It helps us to work with all the data and the numbers as well. So it took us 4 years to do the job, and with the customer we did understand that it is not a business story, it is not a tourist story, it is something for the generation to pass to future generation, for looking more profoundly into that, not from the point of view of some commercial success. And we saw that this is a place of total serenity, where you can go for a walk and just think about everything there. And that is an approach that we are adopting, and that is what helped us to come up with a motto. These are the decisions that we made, and we elaborated the design that will show which work has been done. But you can just put a bench there, and that can be enough. You don't need a lot of lighting there, and you should not be trapped by architectural solutions when you start working on the project, and you were working on it for 2 years, and then you come up with this idea of having just one bench there, and that is all, and that is perfect. And also housing cluster in the mountains. Customer was born there in one of the villages, but then he started doing business in the city, then he moved abroad, and at a certain point of time he realizes that all the dreams, all the thoughts he used to have as a child cannot be substituted by his feelings, by everything he has earned with his business, all the memories he has from his childhood and the kind of happiness he felt back then. And that is how we elaborated this project for this specific customer, and it was very important for us to include a project in a very congenial manner into the garden, so that it looks quite natural, not artificial. And talking about some principles in architecture in the mountains, in order to save the material, the house was included into the rock. So the rock served as one of the walls, and then you go down to the river and you had to lift this stone structure above, and 1/3 of this building was done with this part of the rock. And we used the console, the terrace, in order to have such an excellent view. And there are specific zones allocated for specific purposes for the future guests. And during the process of work, we decided that we wouldn't adopt one approach or wouldn't stick to one style. So we set super tasks for ourselves in order to adjust each project for each territory, for each person, and it is about 1 month that we spend for each project, so that we spend time with the people living there. We have emotional contact that we establish there, and that is how the vision is being born. And with time, I noticed that such an approach enables us, and it took us 3 years to work on that, and there is a trend that the customers, they trust us, they tell us, do it like this, like you want to do it, and we organize some meetings between the customer and the family, and we, as I mentioned before, we establish emotional contact with the family, and it is very important to understand who will be living there, and the connection between generations is a very important point here, and the house is seen as some place of peace, of tranquility for people, and challenges of globalization. They show us that there are a lot of solutions that can be applied, but this doesn't mean that it will be a high quality project. But I think it is all about talking to people, listening to people, understanding people, not actually trying to understand people. That is the key thing, and not making money on this project, because every person has his or her own destiny, and this territory means something to them. So I think having such kind of conversation with these people is very important. Identity is about this. And that is it for my presentation. And this is a link to our Telegram channel. This is a tradition already here. So if there are any questions, well, a brief discussion we may have. In each of the cities that we discussed, there are certain problems related to cultural, historical heritage, because the city of the 19th century can't live in the 21st century. Something has to be adapted, has to be adjusted, and the families that owned that back in the 1920s, in the 1930s, a lot happened after that, and of course, if they decided to do that, we wouldn't have this wooden structures preserved. But on the opposite side, if we take a look at Makhachkala, this is a unique combination, mix of cultures in one place. So the mixture between the cultures of nationalities that used to live there, not only local nationalities, Jews, the Russians, and those who came there to live temporarily. And there was a movement of peoples in the 1940s, in the 1950s, and that was a very active influx of people into the cities, and it drastically changed the structure of the city, and each city has its specific national details, and their aesthetics is different, and they express it in different ways. But what about harmonizing it, and how to relate that to their requests and needs of their present-day society, so that they don't look like souvenirs and examples of something right, so that they serve as live examples. And then we will turn to other examples. Now, Makhachkala. Well, you rightly mentioned that as for agglomeration rate, it ranks second after Moscow. So there are many people who are moving into the urban areas, into the cities, to get more money, to get better education, and it leaves behind a chaos there. And as of today, in Makhachkala, we have a certain transitional period. They built something, some buildings, some housing, and it has been built in accordance with the principle that they don't care what it is behind the doors outside of their houses, but they still need some public space, and there is no sufficient public space available for them. And in the last 3 years, we've realized that we need new routes in order to diminish the number of cars so that people go for a walk, and that is why we need to adopt a holistic approach, because all the elements of the system are interconnected, and we have the example of Derbent with the master plan executed for 10, 20 years, and it was quite successful because they designed good public space, good urban environment, and it was successfully launched because many people, they moved to Makhachkala and not to Derbent. That's why Derbent was fortunate in this regard, and it helped the city to preserve the historical part. But as for administration of the city, they do make some radical decisions, and the problem, but that is that is not in Derbent, that is in Makhachkala. They will destroy about 40 houses, and that was the decision that was already made, and they started doing that. But it is a problem because these people will need new apartments, new flats. So this is a difficult decision to make. And we need a master plan. We need a vision. What about Ufa? Traditionally, you have some historic districts that are closed. The small-scale architecture, but it is huge territory, and this is a specificity on the one hand, and the specific features, and the second part of the issue is the impossibility to build something on those territories because they are closed. Well, now in Ufa, they found a way to do something with that. So it's like an art quarter, the pedestrian quarter, that are interconnected, with some entrances, exits, with some gardens. And here we talk about the following. What should we do with something that used to be in the center? Do we have to preserve it, or do we have to use it in some way? This art quarter belongs to a private investor, and he purchases more and more buildings, and this is like a quarter, and I think that he will actually finally capture all the historic center of Ufa, and it will belong to him. But what about the identity in this regard? Dear colleagues, what about the feeling that you get from visiting a city? Because we have a huge heritage, historic heritage, and sometimes it happens that you come into a city and everything seems equal, very similar. But what about the differences? How can a city distinguish itself from the counterparts? Taking into consideration the state-of-the-art, the modern development, because these are similar examples. Well, we have come to a conclusion that the interior helps us to show authenticity and specificity when you can actually feel the warmth of the place when you enter the building. I should say that there are well, in terms of feelings, diversity is always interesting. For you to feel comfortable, when there is diversity, a person is interested. And when you see a similar kind of architecture, it's quite gloomy. It looks gloomy, we can say it like this. But on the other hand, we have the spiral development, and if everything is diverse, we will not end up in gloominess. But it's a natural movement, it's a natural process, the way things happen, because everyone will find what he needs, because everyone is looking for something specific. We are all different. Me, for example, I'm an architect. I travel a lot, and I'm looking for specific things, but other people, they are looking for different items, for different points, and I should not impose my values upon them. But on the other hand, in some cases you can do it, but it's not about being right. It's a diverse point. And the fabric of the city, as we may call it, somebody can be fed up with it, but another person can come up with a new project, and somebody can plant trees on this territory. Of course, development puts hurdles in our way, but we will still be able to sell it. And there are various offers, various proposals, and it's a natural process as well. Colleagues, another question to each of you. I think each of you have your own creative handwriting. And what is the borderline between what you create in a certain place, how you express the essence of the place, and how can you elaborate various solutions, diverse solutions to different projects that you are executing? Because Makhachkala is different from Derbent, and so on and so forth. Well, Makhachkala is a city that doesn't leave anyone indifferent, because it evokes a lot of emotions when you come there, and I think that you can get distinguished if you do it in a very constrained manner, in contrast with what already exists there. But I think my view is that you don't always need to be distinguished, to distinguish amongst others, because you don't know what people will feel when you come there. But of course you are based on your ambitions or based on what people need there, because I'm inspired by emotions of people. I can imagine that a person walks along the street and he feels healthier, or for example, I elaborated or designed the planning for a healthier lifestyle of people. So that depends on the scenarios that we can imagine in our minds.
So whatever design you do and whenever you do it, it does not imply that all the buildings should be unique and they should be the center of everything. Sometimes they should melt with the background, and there is no bad thing in that. So far, Makhachkala is undergoing the trend to make every building unique, and therefore what we are having today is that there is a lack of background buildings, buildings that blend with the background and rather distract your attention. If you walk around Makhachkala, you can see that every window of the building is very specific due to its details. But sometimes, when you see all that visual input, there is too much visual noise. So I believe that Makhachkala should rather stick to a more simple approach. And focus rather on quality and not the visual image. Question, could you please pass the micro? Thank you. My name is Iskander Saifulin. I'm the professor at the Kazan Construction University, and this session is absolutely exciting. And I'm so much excited about being here. You see that every time we look around Kazan, we can see that there are lots of things that are absent here. Could you please speak up? Well, could you please draw the mic closer to your mouth? Okay, I will. So I hope you understood the music of this city. On the one hand, there are very different styles. On the ones, they're simple. On the other hand, those are very elegant. And you can see these, how these buildings invade the vertical space. And they kind of tune you into some hilarious mood. This post-Soviet environment is so small scale, and all of a sudden it gets expanded. There's an entire blast without even distorting the historical part of the city. So this is what I believe. The fact that some plastic lines are emerging and with the shapes of balconies and the bridges, it's marvelous. But the analytics that you demonstrated, this very elaborate analytics, it's just the code of conduct for every architecture. How can you make your building savory, delicious? How can you compose music out of a building? All these QR codes, all these culture codes, all the symbolics. So it all inspires you. It's so powerful and plastic. And how this dominates and how this expands on the deficits that are there and these horizontal lines. So we should be looking for identity. And the symphony that you can see. So it all depends on how this symphony would become an instrument of your own. Well, sometimes the solutions are on the surface. You should just look at what has been done many years ago. There are the color maps for architects. In St. Petersburg, for example, there is a map of columns, building facades. For windows, there's one color missing. Guess which? There's no white color. Because in this city. We never had windows with white frames. And when you can see that, you just don't understand what's going on. But it's just not the tradition. Well, let's move on like that. Let's protect our code of conduct, because cities are what we see every day. This is the harmony that's together with us. And therefore, this is the most critical harmony. And this is what we were discussing today, in fact. And of course, the developers who are always with us. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for day one. It was great. We've got the record. If you would like to, you can have a look at the record. I've got some important information. Today at 17:30, buses are going to leave to Tatneft Arena for a football match between Islamic countries. This is a great opportunity. So entrance is free for all those who have badges of the forum. So you should turn left and can see the buses starting to the stadium. Thank you very much, distinguished speakers. It was a great session. Thanks a lot to everyone.